Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 256th episode, we have one of healthcare's greatest leaders and collaborators and longtime friend of the show, Steve Lieber, Chief Analytics Officer from CHIME. What an honor to have you back on air, my good friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, Justin. It's great to hear from you as well.
Terrific. So where are you dialing in from today?
Today, I'm actually in Alexandria, Virginia, in the D.C. area, having some little personal time this week.
Excellent. I actually spent a lot of time with you in D.C., not only in Chicago and some of these HIMSS conferences and, from our past, but certainly a lot of work on Capitol Hill. Your team was always phenomenal to collaborate with. So I appreciate that.
As you know, D.C. is kind of an epicenter of healthcare policy, and we've all spent a lot of time here working with the Congress as well as the agencies and all. And over the past 20 plus years now, it's been a good partnership with government. Government has really delivered, I think, more positives for the healthcare industry than the negatives. And there's some of both, but on the whole, it's been a good partnership with government.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And actually take a, moment, people, my audience that listens to the show, really, a lot of them do engage Congress and the White House and the administration or Capitol Hill in general, at the federal level and certainly maybe the state capitals at the local level. But it's really critically important because I always say decisions are being made every day. You can be a part of it or you can just be a receiver of it, but it's better to be on the front side and try to help shape it, offer your thoughts, certainly your thought leadership, your strategy, your best practices. They listen. So it's extremely important to engage.
Yeah, it is. And it's an ongoing process. You can't just dip in once an election cycle or whatever, because as you say, decisions are being made virtually daily. And so, it's an ongoing relationship. And I think that's the way to look at the work with government is it's a partnership, it's a relationship, and you have to work those.
You do. And yep, you got to nurture them. I mean, I think I spent a solid 15 years going to Capitol Hill before I slowed down a little bit. But I still take phone calls. I still help whenever they need something. They ask for help, even just to bounce ideas off of. I'll always make myself available for eternity because it's really important. Again, I think it's part of our civic duty, but also again, you want to offer your thoughts. A lot of us have a lot of experience. We've been doing this now for 25 years, 26 years longer. And it's important that we take what we've learned in our past, so we don't, we don't make the same mistakes in the future. So true.
Yeah.
So, as my, a lot of my audience knows, I have a strong affinity for you personally. You helped a group of us back in 2004 when we wanted to form the Vendors Association for the EHR leaders in the industry. You and several of the HIMSS leadership at the time immediately stepped forward and offered us this great neutral forum to strategically collaborate, as well as, give us antitrust and anti-competitive umbrella. So for that, I'm grateful to you, Steve, and certainly the team that you had at the time. That was transformative to my life, my career. And I'm just grateful for your vision and your leadership. So thank you, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying something. The philosophy I always took while I was at HIMSS was you've got to get everybody in the room. You can't just talk among one group or just among yourselves. You got to get everybody in the room to get to the right answer. And so the relationship and partnership between provider sector and vendor sector, talking about government a few minutes ago, all of those pieces are important to be in the room together talking. And so when you guys came forward and wanted to create that association, it was a natural for it to be in partnership with the provider sector that was the predominant part of HIMSS at the time. And so it was a win-win all the way around.
Yep. Thank you. And I think it's important also for my audience. Certainly I have a lot of new listeners throughout the years. And it's just important to engage your associations, whatever it is. It could be at the local level, it could be at the federal level, national level, global level, international level, whatever it is. It's important. Again, you're learning things on a daily basis. I learned so much from my peers in the industry, and even starting to travel globally and internationally to study other healthcare systems and what best practices can we learn, from other countries. I mean, for example, Cuba has, I think, the most successful birth rate in the world is Cuba. And so we actually went there on a trip, I think it's 2011, a great group of us, and went and studied their healthcare system and study, they have a lot of things that aren't quite as forward thinking, as innovative as us, but with their low mortality rate, their low birth mortality rate, we actually learned a lot and how what we can do and bring into some of our care centers at the local level and some federal programs that we could support. So yeah, I highly recommend everybody engage, different associations to learn and to bring your thoughts forward and take them back.
Well, having been, in the association world for 35 plus years now, I've been there, early stage career, mid career, late career, and there is always something that you can gain from a relationship with your association. There's so much in terms of networking, education, exposure to ideas that you haven't had the opportunity to hear or talk to people about. Having people to talk to in terms of what are you dealing with, exactly. Or here's my problem. Have you encountered that same sort of thing? Because there are a multitude of challenges in our daily professional lives, and we sometimes think that our problems are unique. Well, more than likely they're not. Somebody has dealt with something similar to that, and an association relationship is a great way to deal with those issues, and it becomes a support network. You're talking about your group from the vendor association and what you guys needed to do. You need that peer group, and that's just a perfect place. An association is a perfect place for that to occur.
Yeah, so true. I think, and even sometimes vendors think, well, that's my competition. No, we call it co-opetition, because while our sales teams may have competed and ferociously at times, we got together and we certainly leveraged each other's strengths and their strategy and their expertise. And how can we solve problems? And how can we solve problems for providers? How can we solve problems for patients? How can we solve problems around interoperability? How can we solve, these real world problems that only get solved with us in a room? Government can't figure that stuff out on its own. Even if we're in those task forces, we also have to be putting in work and working directly, across the desk, eye to eye, face to face with our, peers in the industry. It's another EHR company. It might be another health IT company. We may compete at times, but it's more important that, we kind of put our country first in the way of, hey, and our patients first and our industry first. And look, where can we come together? How can we expedite this? Let's not just wait on someone to give us a roadmap. Maybe we go create that roadmap and then we bring it back to them. And that's what we did a lot of the times. And that's what associations allow us to do too.
Yeah. And that working together among competitors is extremely important, because again, just focusing on government policies will affect all vendors in much the same way. And so you need to get together and make sure that policymakers understand the implications, because all too often we see things that occur in regulation or legislation that have unintended consequences because nobody stopped to ask or listen to what might happen if we do A, B, or C. And that is really, it's a powerful voice when you have competitors come together, or multi-stakeholders in the case of what we did many times of having vendors as well as providers there together, talking about the issue and how together we see certain paths as being the right ones. And when you can speak from both the sales side, the product side, as well as the user side, that's a powerful voice.
Very, very true. So following that theme on the associations, you're now working with CHIME. So what made you, go work with CHIME at this level, and what makes CHIME unique?
Sure. Russ Branzell, the CEO of CHIME, and I, when I was CEO of HIMSS, we developed a great relationship and really brought about a synergy between the two organizations. HIMSS historically has largely focused on what I'd call the how-tos and middle management. And so the implementation and installation of products and solutions and a very user level of engagement in that association. CHIME has largely focused on the executive group. And the two together, we really did some neat things, and especially as we took our learnings and went around the world in bringing the best that we could offer. to developing countries and other countries as well. And so after I retired from HIMSS and took a little time off, I mean, I had been on that treadmill and I needed a little downtime, but then it was like, okay, what's next? I'm still very interested, and I've spent virtually my entire career in healthcare. And so, what's next? And it was a natural. And Russ actually asked me to engage with the organization and focus on some strategic things, because that has been a big piece of my career is focus on strategic direction of associations. And so, from that, it has evolved into a 3+ year now relationship. I'm now working in the digital media and analytics area, help to revitalize and bring some new value to the Most Wired annual survey, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. And so it just was a natural. It was a group of people that I knew well. It's an audience that knows me, and I know them, and particularly around the area of survey research and data analytics. This goes back to early days of my career. Yes. That's a place where I love to play. I love to look at data and try to identify trends and such. And so the opportunity of building out a capability of survey research and data analytics at CHIME was just an opportunity too good to pass up.
Yeah, and that's the DHA, is that correct?
Yeah. So we have built out, actually, it's a larger sort of suite of 3 different areas. We have Digital Health Community, which is our social media platform-based communities network. We have Digital Health Insights, which is a digital media. So we do a lot in the way of articles, webinars, and that sort of thing around current topics and such. And then we have DHA, Digital Health Analytics, which is where we do our survey research with the strong foundation on the Most Wired survey, which has been around for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And really, it's the area, the digital health analytics is the area where we're most focused on now in creating a greater value proposition for the CIO members of CHIME, to help them be able to, one, understand what's happening in their own shops, being able to do peer comparisons and benchmarking with others similar to them, the ability for them to do their own surveying among a private network, really just trying to put more powerful tools in their hands to help them navigate what they're going through.
I love it. Yeah, and actually I went through the Digital Health Most Wired survey this morning. So let's dive into that a little bit. I think you guys had just launched it a little bit ago, at least since you were on air last time. So what are some of the high points from that? It's pretty fascinating when you look at, this peer group that you've obviously identified and spoken with. So, what are some of the components that stick out to you the most?
Sure. Yeah, just for anybody who's interested, if you go to dhinsights.org/analytics, you can get to the survey quickly. But this is a survey of some 38,000 facilities, acute, ambulatory, and long-term post-acute. Mm-hmm. And the structure of Most Wired is there are 10 levels, with the level 10 being the highest. And we found that 18 acute care organizations and 17 ambulatory organizations that achieve that highest level. And these are the organizations that not only are in the absolute forefront. So if you think about 18 hospitals out of the several thousand in the United States, it's rarefied territory.
Right. Yes, it is.
So they're the ones that are truly the leaders in healthcare technology, really pushing the industry forward. And they've not only implemented advanced technologies, but they're leveraging them in innovative ways. They've encouraged deep adoption across their entire organization. And so as a result, really realizing meaningful outcomes, improved quality of care, improved patient experience, reduced costs, and so forth. And that really touches on some of the key sort of findings. So recognize this survey was done last summer, so summer of 2022. Mm-hmm. And, it hasn't been that long from this air date that we remember where we were. So COVID was somewhat on the wane. Yeah, we have new variants that pop up every 6 months or whatever, but
Right.
it wasn't like 2021. And so it's coming out of the pandemic. And so what did we find? Well, one thing in particular is a real emphasis on supply chain. Well, why supply chain? Well, remember last summer we were all looking at video from LA Harbor of the stacks of container ships out in the ocean that couldn't come in. The supply chain was totally disrupted. At the same time, when we were experiencing spikes in utilization. And so things like bed and exam room tracking and patient flow software, big increase in terms of a focus on things like that because of what was happening at the time. And I think it's an interesting sort of finding in that we sometimes think about big sectors like healthcare being slow to adapt, slow to change. And I kind of think healthcare is pretty nimble.
Right.
And we see it in these results in terms of having to pivot because of an immediate problem. And what's the solution? Well, nowadays, the solution usually is technology. So big investments we saw from previous years in terms of supply chain and sort of the administrative infrastructure. Another thing that is not so much of a surprise is security remains a key investment and a key risk area. And so continuing to focus on that and trying to be one step ahead of the hackers and such, that was also an area where we not only saw continued investment in the area of security, but in the last section of the survey, which is looking at future priorities, number one priority in the future is dealing with security. Employee-owned devices, again, not too much of a surprise. And you and I and probably many of our listeners remember when this was first an issue. Do you even let anybody bring their own device into the facility or whatever? Well, it's ubiquitous now. There's just not any question. Of course, you're allowing your clinicians to use their personal devices because, one, you don't want somebody having to carry multiple devices and such, and it's just simply a way of doing business. We all do it in terms of that. So again, we saw a significant increase in use of personal devices, but related to that, we see a growth and focus on data governance because data can come in and be accessed through multiple channels, multiple devices. We're seeing an increase in the focus on data governance and ensuring that there is a centralization of data governance, that there is centralized decision making. And this is not new, but what we are seeing is that it's a continuing trend of significance, that organizations are making sure that they are focused and imposing some degree of rigor in terms of data cleanliness, data usage, and such. And so that very much was a key sort of priority. Innovation, again, not a surprise. And one of the things we found is that there's, and again, I don't think this is a big surprise, organizations that have a recognized innovation center. So they have set up a separate area, branded separately, probably governed a little differently than the provider organization itself. Those that have a designated innovation center are the ones that are in the forefront of driving innovation and change. And so they're the ones where we see greater investment and greater activity. So again, not surprised that if you're putting that level of focus and dedication into a particular area, you're going to see the results from it. And I think probably the last thing I'd just highlight out of the survey here is patient engagement. That too showed significant movement in terms of greater focus and investment on patient engagement, particularly remote digital patient engagement. And again, not a surprise given the COVID environment.
Right.
One thing we did see was a slight, not tiny, but a smallish decline in telehealth year over year, 22 over 21. Yep. Again, not too much of a surprise because in 21, that was just about the only way you could do a lot of stuff.
Correct.
22, we started coming back indoors and providing care on site and such. And so, again, overall, I think these are important trends for us to recognize. It's consistent with what we see in terms of articles and activity at provider levels as well as governmental levels, that technology and the technologies in support of clinical care is sort of like job one. Security is right there with and tied at that top focus, and recognizing that. And I think we're starting to see this to be more of a reality versus just a tagline. Patient really is at the center of care. And so let's focus on engaging with them. And so that very much is coming through in the survey.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. And I highly recommend, my audience take a look at it. It's great 17 pages, 16 pages of pure strategy. So the Digital Health Most Wired National Trends Report. So check it out. And certainly page 15 kind of summarizes it all with security, clinical quality and safety, infrastructure, patient engagement, a lot of things that Steve went through as these really top priorities coming out for 2023 and 2024. So in our last couple minutes, Steve, I do want to jump over to our upcoming Vive conference. I mean, we've got that here later next month, March 26th through 29th. And just for those that may have joined a little late, my very special guest today is Steve Lieber, Chief Analytics Officer from CHIME. So in the last couple of minutes, Steve, tell me about, Vive. It's back. We're excited for it. I will be there. I'll be broadcasting live from the show floor, but give us some of your quick thoughts on that.
Sure. This is year 2 of a partnership between CHIME and Health. And what we're trying to do here is sort of rethink what big conferences look like. Typically, you would look at them and see them in 2 parts. You've got the education going on upstairs down the hall, and then you've got the exhibit hall, and the exhibit hall has certain hours, and you do one thing, and then you go do the other, and that sort of thing. And it lacked that large bifurcated experience, lacks some things, and especially the larger you got, the harder it was to create a really engaging experience. Well, Health as an organization, and many of our listeners here may attend the Fall Health Conference. It's in their DNA to bring just a really personalized, engaged experience to a conference. And so that very much is at the cornerstone of what we're doing at Vive. CHIME, long storied history in terms of its education for executives and decision makers. And so you're putting the 2 of those together. And so, as I say, this is year 2. We're in Nashville, March 26, 29. Mm-hmm. And this year we're expecting about 7,500 people. So about a 50% increase over last year when we were in Miami Beach. The vibe from Vive that came out of last year's experience was just fantastic. I mean, it just was amazing in terms of who you run into, the opportunity to engage with folks. And so moving with that sort of experience in the forefront, we're moving the education down on the same floor as the exhibition. Exhibition is limited, small booths, none of the big multi-story mega booths, because the whole idea is to make sure that you can engage, that there is a meaningful conversation going on. So we've got government leaders, we've got provider leaders, we've got vendor leaders, big focus on startups, got about 100 startup companies between investors and incubators, as well as companies themselves. And so a significant focus on that innovation and a lot of the topics. So AI, big topic that'll be a part of what we're focused on. So, in a nutshell, it's focused on a lot of where we're going. And I think I differentiate that maybe with other conferences where you do spend a lot of time on how to install, how to implement what we have. This is more strategy and future focused, but not out beyond where anybody is. So we have people who will be presenting exactly what they're doing in areas that many may see as unique, innovative, new. And so it's a fantastic experience in bringing together all of these stakeholders in an environment where the flow is natural.
Love it. Love it, Steve. Thank you so much. And I will certainly, I'll be there March 26th to 29th in Nashville, Music City Center. If people are available or can make themselves available, I highly recommend you attend. The vibe coming out of Vive last year was amazing because we were reverberating at the HIMSS conference. A lot of people left Vive and went into HIMSS, and I just felt the energy. So I'm excited to participate today. But that's all the time we have today. Steve, thank you so much. It was great to have you on air. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thanks to everyone. Thank you, Steve. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or want to hear more, all my shows are posted on Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And check out the new website we just launched at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.